Thank you for joining this video tutorial of the African campaign. My name is John Kranz with Compass Games, and let's get started. This session is going to focus on the order of battle appearance cards, and it's meant to help for newcomers to the game of how to set up units on this appearance card and help answer any questions about I can't seem to find this unit, or I don't know where to put this unit on the display. So that's what we're going to cover today. So first, let's do a quick tour. We're going to use the Allied Order of Battle display as our example today. There's also one for the Axis player. Quick tour of this card in general. At the very top is you have your at start positions. In the middle you'll have the overall reinforcement schedule, and at the bottom there's two things going on. There's what's called the step reduction boxes. That's for units in the game that as they take step losses they actually have another unit, an additional unit that can come into play, that as they absorb losses they will basically swap out for these units of lesser value as they take hits. And then at the very bottom there's something called unit substitutions, which we're going to talk about as well. So this is the area, the bottom area is where most of the units, where folks are asking, I can't seem to find where to place these units on the map, or I can't seem to find them on the reinforcement schedule, so I've got all these extra units, I don't know where to put them. That's basically because they're going to go in this bottom section. They're either going to be step reduction units, or they're going to be used for unit substitutions. So that in essence is what's going to be covered in this tutorial. So let's take a little bit of a deeper dive on this order of battle appearance card. So I'm going to zoom in just for a moment on this card. Again, as I mentioned already, we've got the at start locations, not too many units, and you'll notice in the top left hand corner of every counter is the starting position. It will be a letter code perhaps for units, or instead if you see a number, that will be the game turn of entry for those units as well. So that's what we're seeing on the counters, which will help guide us as far as setup goes. There is something unique for the Allied player only, and that is the concept of unit withdrawals, or unit returning to the game. So we have a little code here, a little key rather, that says, okay, if a unit has to be withdrawn, we'll put a big black outline around that unit box, or we'll put a big white outline around that unit box representing that unit, so you know what to do with it. So when you look at the reinforcement schedule, we'll see here the big number in white in the red circle. That is the actual game turn, along with the date that it corresponds to on the turn record track, which is printed on the map. So you want to go ahead and follow this schedule, and as I mentioned, for unit withdrawals we have rules on that. You'll see, for example, on turn 3, the Allied player has to withdraw that 3-6 4th Indian Infantry Division, and by the way, it will be returning on turn 12, so we include that as a little bit of a mnemonic aid to help remind you it's going to come back. And you'll notice here on turn 12, sure enough, there it is, and notice that it's coming back at a stronger step strength as a 4-6 instead of that 3-6. And that's something about, I think it's unique to the Allies in the game. I don't believe that's perhaps true for the Axis player, but I know for the Allies it's true. One thing that might be confusing at first if you're playing for the first time is you're going to be thinking, oh, the units should enter the game at full strength. And that's not the case for the Allied player. There's replacements in the game that you can use. So you'll see some units that actually come in at a reduced strength. So maybe they come in on their flip, on their backside, and then using replacement markers you can build them up and flip them back over to their front side. So please note the unit strengths on this chart do correspond, and they might be actually at the weaker strength on the back side of the counter. So now that we've covered all the reinforcements and the game turns and where we have withdrawals or units returning, I mentioned again, I know some newcomers to the game have asked about, I've got some units I'm not sure what to do with. And there's two things going on there that once we discuss these, I hope this will help you as far as setup for the game, and you'll see I've actually set up all the markers already for the Allied player. So we have the concept of step reduction in the game. What step reduction basically means is as a parent formation takes step losses, let's say the first step loss, you're going to flip the counter over. If it has a reduced strength side to it, you're going to go ahead and use that. But let's say a unit then takes a second step loss. It's already at its reduced strength or on its backside. That's where you're going to want to look at the step reductions here, and you might have a unit that represents the same formation but at a lower strength because that unit can absorb 3 to 4 step losses total. So here's an example for the Australians, and I've already set up these units here. So I'm going to go ahead and move them out of the way just for purposes so we can see this box. And this is how you would do setup. So for the Australian units, of course we're going to set up all the Australian units up here. We've got the 9th here. We've got this, the 7th here that gets removed. We've got the 9th here because it came back. So we've got all these Australian units here. You know, they're going to be even at start you're going to find them. So I've got this orange coating, which by the way helps me find all the Australians. So we've got certain units of the Australians that are going to be placed on the map or coming in as reinforcements, etc. But you're still going to have these 3 units that you're wondering, what do I do with these guys? I just can't find a spot for them. And that's because each of these units represent step reduction units. They're going to correspond to the stronger strength units as they take step losses. So for example, the 9th formation, here's the 9th right here on the reinforcement track. As that unit takes step losses and as it takes its second step loss, you're actually going to replace it with this counter. Notice that the formation matches. It's the Australian 9th. A perfect match, but of course this unit is weaker. It can absorb 2 additional steps. So this unit you want to place on its corresponding division formation track. So all the lower strength units are going to be placed here. And of course I've done it already for all the Indian units in the game, the South Africans, New Zealand step reduction as well, and then the British units as well. So that pretty much covers it, but there's one big exception that's going to help a lot, I think, and that is when you look at the British box. I want to explain what we've done here to try to organize these a little differently. So what we've done here is you see we've got the 6 division formations and we've got the 6 corresponding units here. However, there are actually 3 additional British step loss units in the game that could very well have been placed in here, but you know, again, we don't have their formation designation. We don't have the 7th, the 1st, or the 2nd in here. We did that for 2 reasons. One, we didn't want to overcrowd this area, and secondly, we really think these units, these step reduction units, should go ahead and belong and be next to the actual parent formation box where we have the substitute units as well. So you want to take these step reduction units, and instead of placing them in this box for the British, since we've got the 1st armor, 2nd armor, and 7th armor, we're going to go ahead and place those 3 step reduction units right inside this big parent formation box. We're going to keep everything together that has to do with these 3 divisions. And I bet there's some of you shaking your head saying, yes, this is exactly where I got confused. I was looking for these 3 units and they weren't listed on the step reduction box for the Brits, so I really didn't know what to do. So that's exactly hopefully going to solve that little riddle for you, that you're going to go ahead and place them there. Now about the substitute units itself, like I said, we've already covered step reduction, which is the top area here, this area here with the British, but then we've got these substitute unit boxes. And in the game with a divisional size unit, you can either do what's called breaking down a division into its substitute parts, or you can build up a division to its single unit. So for example, we've got this, in this case for the 1st Armor Division, that unit's actually starting here. The reason it's starting here is because it's 3 units that are part of the division actually will set up on the map or enter play. And what will happen is you can combine these units in the same hex, and then they can be replaced by this single unit. That's called building up. Here's a different case where perhaps we're going to break down a divisional unit. So for example, the 7th Armored Division, you'll notice I don't have that unit here. That's because the 7th Armored Division is going to be in play already, and I'm going to go ahead and find it for you. So let's look. There it is right there, 7th Armored Division. It's going to start at Mersa Matruh. So there's the divisional unit. So we can do a unit substitution at some point in the game where I replace that unit with these 3 sub-component units. And you'll notice the color coding, the formation matches. So that's where you're going to have these extra units. You're not going to find these 3 units here, for example, under the at start or in the reinforcement area, because they're used as unit substitutions during play. So again, just looking at the Allied players chart, I hope this helps clarify. We've got some additional units that are going to be also, they'll have a place on this chart. as I'm showing here. And again, what you want to do here is you want to make sure you place all the units in their appropriate boxes. The one exception is, since we've got big boxes already for the first armored, second armored, seventh armored, go ahead and just take those step reduction units and place them in the same box. It's going to be the same for the Axis player, by the way. The Axis player is going to have some substitute units as well, and they're going to have some step loss units, some step reduction units. So you're going to want to go ahead and place those in the German area as well. And also, just to close, I want to point out we've got the rules of play online. So if you go to compassgames.com and just navigate to the African Campaign product page, and you'll see a download under the rules and downloads tab for that game page. You can get the PDF for the rules, which is where I'm at right now. And you'll see here on page 9, we actually get into these rules about division, breakdown, and build up, which I covered, which helps explain where all these extra units are that might not be called for at start or as a reinforcement. So we talk about the division breakdown, which is the concept of taking the division unit and breaking it down into its component parts. Or there could be, again, a division build-up where you start with the subcomponents, multiple units that then stack together, and then they get replaced and build up to that single divisional unit. We also have special rules. We have 2 special formations in the game. We have the British 1st Armored Division. Basically, we have those 3 subunits in play. They come in as reinforcements during play. And then if those 3 units stack together, you can actually add that Lancers recon unit as a bonus. Once you stack those 3 together, you could add the Lancers, and then you even have the additional option to build up to this 7/6 divisional unit. Again, that's for the British 1st Armored unit. And then lastly, we have a special rule. This is an interesting one, actually. It's for the New Zealand division. Their strength is a 5/6 at full strength infantry. Notice the unit type box. It's an infantry unit as a 5/6 2nd New Zealand Infantry Division. But there's a special rule that if you go ahead and just stack it with any full strength armored brigade, and as a player tip, any armored unit at full strength is going to show a tank icon on the counter instead of the NATO symbology for an armor unit type. So we know we've got the again brigade size indicator here with the single X. And then we've got an icon which says it's at full strength. So what happens with this, the 2nd New Zealand, is if you stack this infantry division together with any full strength armored brigade, you can basically trade it up for this new unit, which is a 7/6 2nd New Zealand. But notice the infantry type with that armor component added switched from infantry to an armored infantry division size unit. So the unit type's changed. So I want to just leave you with this one last note because this question's already come up already, so it's a great question. Somebody asked, I can't find a step loss for this 7/6 unit. So if I build it up in play, if I flip it over, it's a blank, it's blank on the back side. So how does this unit take losses? Well, that's because you're going to actually revert back to the 5/6 original infantry division unit. So if the 7/6 comes into play, if you go ahead and build it up as this rule states, the first time this unit takes a step loss as a 7/6 mech infantry, instead of flipping it over for the first step loss, you're going to basically replace it back with this 5/6 infantry division. And again, it's going to change back to the infantry type because basically you've lost that armor component as part of that step loss. So again, I hope this has been helpful to help explain where those extra units are going to go. Again, the vast majority are going to be in this bottom section. They're going to be either used for step reduction or part of unit substitutions. And just keep in mind, for those big formations that have their own substitute unit box, we're going to go ahead and place those replacement counters in that area as well, just to keep everything together for those divisions. So again, as I always do in closing, I want to thank you very much for purchasing the African Campaign, or if you're just trying it out on Vassal and Sun Tzu. I hope you really enjoy the game. Hope you'll invest in the game if you don't have it already, or think of it for a friend for a birthday or a winter holiday gift. And I appreciate all your support, and I really hope this video has helped you. Thanks again. Bye-bye.